One question that I always have is that Singaporeans are so confident going overseas, but back home, when they are looking at all this foreign manpower, they feel so insecure. One of the first things that we have to do is to be a bit more confident. At the end of the day, we are the hosts here.
I don't think it's a matter of confidence, right? I think it's a matter of irritation. Because there are two things here, it's immigrants and foreign workers. And I think these are two different things. Both have their kettle of problems. But with foreign workers, it's more about the overcrowding, the infrastructure that's affected, and the fact that they don't integrate, they don't speak English, or they don't speak a language that we like or we prefer. Maybe they don't say la as often as you'd like.
Or the behavior
I
aspects as well.
Like hanging clothes in the playground, that kind of thing that irritate people.
Riding the bicycle against the traffic.
Yeah,
Or
and
not following our social norms,
Yeah.
Observing cues.
Yeah, and then
there's factors of politeness. Issues like that also come up. But it's not just irritation. No? There is a more serious point, which is there is a real fear about jobs. If we started a rule, you can only employ Singaporeans. I think all of you agree that's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Economy will tank, investments will go away. So we cannot do that. What we can do is to say, look at the investment carefully that's coming in. First of all, we got to make sure it's useful and good for Singapore. Second, we got to make sure it creates jobs in Singapore. And then we got to look carefully at what kind of foreign manpower they need in order to create that investment in Singapore. We do all of that. And we also have organization, institution to look at discrimination against Singaporeans. There will also be cases where Singaporeans who may not quite match up to the requirements of the job, but who feel unhappy that they have not been promoted. That happens. If a Singaporean is available for the job, I think it's our duty to make sure that he gets a job.
That's my point.
But if we say even if he is not qualified, he should be appointed, I can say that, but while in the short term it may look popular, in the longer term it will end up disadvantaging Singaporeans because our economy will go down.
But on the other hand, there's also a concern because there will never be enough Singaporeans to compete with the Indians. There will never be enough Singaporeans to compete with the Chinese,
the
for example.
That is, you don't keep taking investments. You take investments which are necessary, which are going to create enough good quality jobs, and the foreign manpower can only be a part of it. There is no point in bringing in an investment that primarily employs foreigners. It doesn't add value to us. We must get good jobs. But if as part and parcel of that package, there are going to be some foreigners, that is something we have to accept.
So if I may shed a different light from the entrepreneurship, disruptors and innovators communities in Singapore, because I run the hub, things are very different, and perhaps that can maybe inform or give a glimpse of what the future of Singapore and the society can be. At the entrepreneurship side, because we are not job seekers, we are job creators.
Yeah.
We don't have a fixed mindset, we have a growth mindset. And in the growth mindset, we don't have a fight or flight mentality, It's not even about pro-foreigners or pro-Singaporeans, we are pro-innovation, we are pro-diversity. And it is a beautiful thing going on in Singapore in the entrepreneurship space where a reverse brain drain is happening. We have a lot of startups and entrepreneurs who have gone to the Silicon Valley, gone to China, gone to Malaysia, and they're coming back. Why? Because now we are suddenly funky, right? We suddenly allow individual expression, self-expression. We have neighborhoods like Tiong Bahru and Arab Street and Joo Chiat. And over there, we eat mee pok and we eat pizzas in the same restaurant. It's a literally beautiful East meet West kind of thing, and there's no labeling over there.
Yeah.
It sounds really sexy, like, we are not pro-foreigners or pro-Singaporeans, we're pro-growth, pro-innovation. Fantastic, sounds great.
From
Who's
her
going to
perspective,
protect the guy on the street?
There will be people who look at it like that, but then others who are not in it will say, why are there so many foreigners?
The guy on the street, the little guy on the street.
But you're saying
what about
protect the guy on the street, but also protect our own entrepreneurs. Then the last year alone, I've met restaurateurs, mechanics, who are Singaporeans owning their own businesses here. And they say they can't handle the work because they're left by themselves because of the quota, which has been put in place to advantage Singaporeans.
And how does that help the guy on the street? Because ultimately, so the only way to help the guy on the street, Diana, is to make sure that he is well trained, he gets a job. And I agree with you fundamentally, there is a limit to how many people there can be here, which means we must trade off economic growth. But we create the jobs, But at the same time, entrepreneurs, you want to create a global city, you want to create a bus, what do you need?
Me, like most Singaporeans, agree that we need foreigners
I
in
think
our
most people
economy.
agree with
There is
that.
absolutely no question
Yeah.
about that. But
It's-
I do have an issue when the entire discussion is framed as a trade-off.
What is it that we want? We want jobs. We want a good quality of life for our people. I think these are things people will not argue about. We want our people to be fulfilled. The real question is, how do you get there? You have 700 square kilometers, you have no resources, you are dependent on foreign investment, you are dependent on your SMEs creating value. Let's work together to see how it can be done. And we must realize not everyone can be at the top of the finance sector.
That's fine.
There is the man in the street.
That's fine.
If he starts saying, what is there in it for me, then we are in trouble. So we have to make sure he gets the benefits too.
I feel like the policies and all the hard work within government is not proportionate to the sentiments in society. And I think here is the challenge. The benefits of immigration and the cost of immigration are really difficult to be communicated.
Because
the
it
cost of
comes in intangible ways.
Exactly.
You don't realize that your job is dependent on this immigration. You don't realize that in 15 years your taxes can be kept low because of immigration. But when the fellow crushes against you in the MRT, speaks rudely to you in public,
Exactly.
and they behave badly, all of that is immediate. Beyond all of this, fundamentally, we all need rootedness. We are trying to create an identity of nationhood, Singaporeanness, and of course, immigration at this level impacts on that.
If our population is not well integrated, it could severely impact social cohesion. What do you hope Singapore can accomplish in the short and longer term?
Dynamic.
I think it's an ongoing process of social integration. It requires effort, obviously, on both parts. For the average Singaporeans, let's not say that, it's the government's job or it's whichever institution's job. On a day-to-day basis, at your touch points, at the hawker centre, on the MRT, that's where you can make a small difference, I suppose.
Actually, I am of the view that this phase that we are experiencing is part of the change in the economic restructuring of Singapore. If we are really thinking of maintaining our current standard of living and doing better in the coming years, we just have to find ways to work with the government. We mean the Singaporean must work with the government to acclimatize the newcomers in our midst. And I don't think there is any serious threat to our society if we take a very broad-minded approach.
I think it would be a great thing if you were to look on social media and say, if I'm upset about somebody, it's not about the angmo or about that PRC, it's about that person, not even male or female. That would show a mature society that says, I'm upset about a person's actions, not so much about where his nationality is from, etc. And I think also to maybe the government to have more integrated communities and activities, etc. Because we're very good at that and very good at campaigns as well. And also to understand that we need to replace ourselves, either through integration with immigrants, all right, with intermarriages, or by maybe the government having some sort of better incentives to have more babies and increase our fertility because we are really shrinking.
I think all of those viewpoints are valid. It pretty much sums up, we have to do more, we have to communicate better. We have two major challenges. One is, today we have 6 persons under 65 and 1 person over 65. Within 15 years, that ratio is going to change drastically. There will be 2 persons under 65 for every 1 person above 65. Less people in the productive sectors of the economy, more people retiring. What does that do to your economic vibrancy? Because as people age, medical costs are going to shoot up. Aging population, how are you going to provide for it? You take Japan today, there are more adult diapers being sold than babies' diapers. And our TFR, we are not replacing ourselves, it is 1.25. Second major challenge is economic competitiveness. Throughout the world now, you can do almost anything from different locations outside of Singapore. Take accountancy. Today you can have 300 accountants sitting in some city in China, a Singapore company emailing the entire records over. They write up everything, they email it back. You just need a fraction of the previous manpower to go and do up the accounts. But that means loss of good accounting jobs. How do we make sure we have good jobs and good investments. I would like to lift ourselves up and look at the future and say, what is the positive vision? It's a very exciting vision. We are in the middle of a vibrant ASEAN, the best educated city, the most highly talented concentration of people, great rule of law, great safety, wonderful place to live in. If we get ourselves sorted out, the current problems would be very small compared with the potential benefits.
I would like to ask a question about scholarships.
Yes.
We have very many foreign students in our midst, and I think as of 2013, it has been shared that the government spends about $36 million a year to give over 2,000 scholarships to foreign students. Some Singaporeans are feeling that these are the foreigners who are also depriving our own people of places at the tertiary levels, for example, and even further down. What's your take on that?
Entry into our universities are based on cutoff points. No Singaporean is denied a place if he can qualify through the cutoff points. So it's not as if there are only so many places, and because we give some places to foreigners, therefore Singaporeans cannot get in. You meet the criteria, you get in. There are people who don't meet that criteria, who get very unhappy because they have to spend hard-earned life savings sending their children to Australia or somewhere else, and who feel, why is this foreigner in that faculty when my son could have gotten in? The point is, the university wants to maintain a certain standard. It keeps to that criteria. If they don't make it, they don't get in. And that is not easy to accept. But it's not because of the foreigner. Now, second part of your point is, why are they these foreigners in our schools? You want to be an integrated ASEAN. Singapore wants to be the New York of ASEAN, then we have to do our part. Our people are going to get tremendous opportunities when ASEAN gets integrated. But as part of that, we also have to allow some ASEAN students to come here. You know, they become our brand ambassadors as well. Right. Don't forget, there is a lot of soft power. I give you one example. A Vietnamese student who studied here is in Silicon Valley. When our companies want to go over there, he offers tremendous help. And the returns we get, our companies get, far outweighs anything we spend. A large number of the students who come here, we try and put in place structures that require them to work in Singapore and contribute back to the economy. Now, that doesn't mean there are people who are not cynical and who don't take advantage. There will always be that group. Our task is to try and identify that early and make sure those who come either come because of these sorts of obligations, international obligations, or because we know that they're going to contribute back. We have to try and make sure of that. Now, we're not going to get that 100% right. But in the main, you can be assured that's our aim. We have nearly 100,000 civil servants around the world who have come to Singapore under what we call the Singapore Cooperation Program to understand our systems of governance and so on. Now, we do this because the world helped us when we succeeded. Now we are relatively successful, we ought to help others. So we do it for those sorts of reasons. But when they go back to their countries, they have spent 2 weeks in Singapore, 3 weeks in Singapore, 4 weeks at our expense, our taxpayers' expense. But they are grateful to Singapore. They have positive experiences of Singapore, and it increases our soft power.